What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Axioms on Trial, episode 43. It is May 28th, 2021, Friday, Good Friday. So hopefully everybody's having a great Friday. We are going to do a pretty overdone video, I feel like, even though we have not seen... I don't know about you, but I get suggested other content creators responding to the video that we're doing. I haven't clicked any of theirs yet, so I haven't watched the original, nor have I watched fellow atheist content creators' responses to it. But Cease, I wasn't sure. Have you watched the video yet yourself, or are we both going into this blind?
We're both going into blind. I saw it under a recommendation. I was like, oh, maybe we might be able to say something. In retrospect, we probably should prepare a little more thoroughly before going through this stuff, but
maybe
sometimes it's just fun to kind of go in blind and see what happens.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is.
We have a lot of plans on to plan, or a lot of plans to plan more, basically, in the future with episodes and scripting. A little slower on it, but we have made steps. We just made a step, or I should say, Cease finally did it because I couldn't figure it out. But we're gonna get a Patreon set up as well if anyone wants to support the channel. That'll take, I don't know how long for us to figure that out, but eventually it'll be there, and we'll also have other content and stuff like that might make that more worth it for the viewer. But anything from you, Cease, before you want to get into it? I know it's been a while since we've done a show.
Yeah, it's been a while. I'm looking forward to getting more shows more frequently. I see. I just kept seeing people responding to this video, but like you said, I haven't seen any of the actual responses yet. So I'm curious to see what these questions are on this video.
All right, I am as well. I'm trying to get it set up, and I think I figured it out. There we go. So if anyone's that's not familiar, it's 10 questions for atheists by Trinity Radio, Braxton Hunter, which I'm not too familiar with. Braxton's, like, I don't watch a lot of his debates. Oh yeah, actually, thank you, Witter. I appreciate that. We are really close to 1K. We haven't really announced this very much, but if you can subscribe, if you're watching and you haven't, please help us out. If you want to share it to people that you know that might like this type of content, do that as well. And get us to 1K. That'd be really, really cool. That's a really sweet milestone. But anyway,
I can't believe we're almost there.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. But yeah, so I'm not too familiar with Braxton's debates or things like that, so it's completely blind for me. I've watched a little bit of his stuff, but I'm very interested. Seems that this has gathered some attention, so we'll find out why. Any comments before I hit play?
No, I'm on the same boat. I think I only, like, this week or so subscribed to his channel, and I haven't watched his videos yet. So let's see if he has anything interesting to offer.
Space can be so combative, and when atheists...
Okay, let's back that up. Something skipped. You hear the audio?
Worldview discussions space can be so combative, and when atheists and Christians come up with
definitely dealing with some lag
of questions that they don't think the other side can answer, those questions usually aren't genuine. I've never made a list like that, although I've responded to some. Here, I hope my atheist interlocutors will consider these questions deeply without giving glib answers. These aren't meant to be gotcha questions, though I'm not asking for no reason. I expect you will have answers, and I want to hear what the most sincere among you have to say. With that, here are my 10 questions for atheists. What facts about reality that you and I agree are real facts about the way the world is does your worldview account for, but my Christianity doesn't account for, or at least doesn't account for well? And for those of you that would point out atheism isn't a worldview.
Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and I guess we can answer the question first. Well, here, actually, let me, because it says for those who think atheism worldview, I want to hear that.
I'm talking about your worldview that includes atheism.
Okay. All right, fair enough. That's a fair question. Cece, you want to start, or I have some things off top of my head, but I don't know if you wanted to start.
Sure. I don't think that the Bible and Christianity addresses the problem of evil adequately. I feel like the attempts by scholars to answer this question have all failed pretty miserably. And also, I don't think that it actually answers much about the universe that we live in and why it's the way that it is. I think there are some positives to religion as a whole, but those positives are not inherent to religion. So yeah, I don't think that Christianity does much at all to explain the facts about reality, like how we are here. How do we derive meaning?
Sure.
All the questions that matter the most to us, it doesn't answer in a way that I think is remotely adequate.
Yeah, I would agree. And also, it seems that, from my understanding, if I'm hearing his question right, like I don't really know of anything that Christianity's accounted for in the way that my worldview has, because my worldview is very heavily dependent upon a certain method that's used to determine the or the potential or the imaginative from the actual. And so I don't know the claims in there that would suffice to that the same way that I would in talking about the universe expanding from some initial state of high density and temperature, with novel predictions of the abundance of light elements that you're going to expect, right, to find, as well as the large scale structure, all these types of things that you would go into for maybe even just Big Bang cosmology, right? For example, that's something that's, that's why I don't like the atheist worldview, but I'm going to say there is no God required in those predictions, right? Like you don't have to actually have that assumption in there in any way, which allows for the person on that side, on the religious side, to do something like intelligent design and just add this, extra entity at the end of it all and go, oh, well, God's just pulling the strings on it or whatever, which is just an extra assumption that you don't need in any way. And so just by principle of parsimony, it seems to be like obviously not needed. I mean, like in nowhere is that entity that's in that model on the religious side ever part of the actual novel predictions that are made. You don't need them. And so I think that's kind of the nail in the coffin from my perspective.
Now, there are those theists who will say that, well, you're not supposed to look at the Bible like a science textbook. It's doing something else, which is fine if you have that perspective. But I would say that, that's why I kind of added the idea of existentialism in there as well, because I think it fails on that end too. I don't think it offers much that we can use to bring society closer to well-being, or meaning. It tries to diminish meaning to the will of something else. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, really, you don't have really any meaning at all. I mean, you are. I mean, from that worldview, I could argue with somebody about metaethics, for example, and I could bring up 1 Samuel 15:3 and about how God is ordering the killing of babies, or Genesis 6 when he's putting their heads underwater themselves. And the response is going to be like, well, God can deal with that way. So he can, he created it, he can destroy. So
that's just a cop-out.
Right. Well, the reason I bring this up is to say, like, what meaning do you have when ultimately, like, you don't have any meaning, because the second that God decides to kill, and I think the best example is the innocent infants. That example to me shines the greatest, because like, at what rate could you ever hold them responsible for anything? And if that is not even an exception there, like, clearly you are not going to be. And for me, that just seems meaningless. The only meaning there is the actual celestial, North Korean dictator there. That's the only one that's deriving any sense of meaning out of something. But maybe you might disagree with that assessment, but that's kind of my perspective.
Well, I mean, obviously, I think that defining what is good is simply about what God says to do is begging the question. It doesn't, actually deriving why I should care, or again, if you think that God is moral by drowning babies, I think you're confused about what morality is. And it's funny that Christians talk about us not having grounds for morality when that is their perspective.
Sure, and that's kind of the point I'm making, is that you take that the next step from there, right, to just the aspect of meaning. Like, I don't know how you even derive any meaning once the kind of moral lawgiver, so to speak, is the one that can really just, you almost have to say, yeah, he could just come down and smite me if he wanted to, because I'm not worthy, right? I'm nothing but a dirty rag. And so that's why it's like,
even in that context, I can see how a Christian could derive meaning from the idea of serving this God, but it's not a meaning that I would ever be able to experience. That would not bring me meaning, to be something else's, I don't know, slave in a sense.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I mean, in that point, I mean, from your standpoint, I mean, I could agree. You could just compare that model wise of like, well, let's look at what I mean by meaning, right, and see what you mean by meaning in your model, and compare them from that point. I think it's pretty clearly obvious that, yeah, that kind of give yourself to something that really could just kill you or an infant at any will is
yeah, but I wouldn't say Christians can't have meaning. I would just say that it's meaning that I don't relate to.
Sure, I guess I'm more such undermining the supposed intrinsic meaning that they espouse, that seems to just be really only beneficial for the actual leader involved, and really no meaning is given once you can be thrown away like dirty rags. And once the fact that you even admit to that, seems to be a problem. But I mean, that's being very pedantic about it. I was gonna say, so we have that, and then generally just any kind of aspect of how I'm going to rely getting to what something is as opposed to what I think something is, right? That gap between our imagination to the actual, that's always better in the worldview that I take. That it's just, for me, that's every time I play chess with you, I win. And you can look at that as conceded. It's not me. It's that I am going where where the results follow. I don't want to take ownership of it, or anything like that. It's just say that is where, things get done in the lab. The a priori assessment that you have of some God having a better cosmological, explanatory power or something, to me is just grossly. That's just on a level of hubris I can't get along to say that that's better of an explanation. But
I mean, it's completely unfounded, and I think that's the irony, that people like us are accused of arrogance. And it's like, there's not a lot that I would say I'm particularly certain of. Actually, there's only one thing I'm certain of, and the rest I have confident belief in. But I'm not, I'm open to changing my mind when evidence is provided. And yet there are so many. I'm not going to say all, obviously, but there are so many theists who are convinced, without being able to show a methodology that makes those convictions legitimate. I would be a theist if that methodology was provided to me. It doesn't necessarily have to be science, but something that can show me why it is that I should take these claims as anything more than just imaginary.
Yeah. I mean, the claims of when Braxton walks up to me and says, this is what I believe in, I think this better accounts for the world around me, it's really no different than some, spiritualist telling me about 5D, that they know the nature of reality because they have achieved 5D consciousness or something, right? Like, those two claims are the same. Why are they the same? Because they both have the same support structure, which is nothing at all. And so when you claim that that's the case, then show me what the actual novel predictions are, because it seems like you're going to just, when you actually go to it, the only thing you can say is what's already been used, which is what my foundation, my worldview is based upon, is what is only made possible through God, which is just an extra assumption that we don't need until you can demonstrate it, especially when it's just some a priori assertion. But
when Christians talk about the idea of the cumulative evidence, to me it's like, well, it doesn't really go anywhere when every aspect of that evidence are flawed. Then it's not like you throw in 100 bad pieces of evidence and now suddenly you have a good argument. Like, no, it's just,
yeah,
to me it's a failure on all fronts.
Sure. Well, let's move on. We've been on one for a while.
I can't think of any. Christianity accounts for evil, suffering, the existence of other religions, including
the existence of other religions. I don't know why that caught me. It does not explain suffering, but like, I can give a much better reason of why we have gratuitous suffering in the type of world that we live in. It does a
terrible job at accounting for suffering. And again,
that doesn't care about emotions and feelings, right? And the one that you think is omnibenevolent has, just excessive gratuitous suffering. And we're not even just talking about suffering, but sorry.
I think the disagreement here is on what is meant by account, because account doesn't just mean make up a narrative. It means be able to show why that explanation is justified. To just, construct a story. Yeah, that's right. He didn't just say gratuitous suffering.
No, I agree. I'm just saying you can't not account to gratuitous suffering, and that is a fact of the world that we can observe.
I agree. It tries to explain why suffering is a thing. I just think that I don't find that explanation adequate for many different reasons. And that's, maybe we can do an episode particularly on the idea of suffering. I think we've done some conversations with theists about it before, but we can move on. Maybe.
Yeah.
Supernatural events in those other religions, science, and differences among different denominations of Christianity. But I can think of many things that the most common worldviews that include atheism don't answer as well as I think Christianity does. Like universal supernatural claims, universal religious.
Okay. I know I'm cutting in real quickly, but I want to be pedantic a little bit. Universal and supernatural claims. That doesn't mean shit. No offense, Braxton. Like, I don't care that people have had claims of some event. Like, that there's nothing about that makes that the case. It only makes it the case that people have had experiences that they don't understand what happened. That's all it tells you. It doesn't tell you anything further, unless you actually can show the thing in question, like the candidate thing that you proposed for the explanation, has some merit, some data point we could point to. You have a big zero there for anything supernatural. I mean,
we see. I mean, it says atheism. Again, it's not about atheists, but our sort of naturalistic perspective answers this perfectly well. All you got to do is look at the last 100 years of psychology, the way in which people's senses and experiences, people interpret certain phenomena a certain way. When we actually know what's going on, we can see where these things are being misconceived. There's a lot about but the explanation of the way we are, and whether it's wishful thinking, whether it's just errors in the perception, that neuroscience and psychology and all these things have done a lot to give us, that don't have to assume any kind of supernatural explanation. So I don't agree with that at all.
Yeah. Shout out to physics. Yeah, physics police and Steve.
Hey Mark, everyone coming in. Thanks for joining.
Yes, as well. Yeah, let's move on. I'm keeping pedantic.
Experiences, free will, morality, near-death experiences, beauty, the rapid expansion of the early church.
Okay, there's a lot there. Beauty. I'm not really sure about aesthetics and accounting for that. I don't even know what that means that there's an objective beauty. I think that's just, again, a narrative that you are applying to it. But even beyond that, what did he say? What was it right before that?
He said morality, beauty. He said, what was everything he said?
Beauty, the rapid expansion of the early.
There's a key word in there. It just
experiences, free will, morality.
Free will. That was the word. I don't know, man. I'm not really convinced free will is an option, even like to even on just like a dichotomy aspect. And you might disagree with me, but it seems to just be some deterministic aspect or random. I'm not sure how you account for, like, the only arguments I hear have to deal with like agent causation versus event causation, which just is some unsubstantiated claim to say like there's a difference between the two. I see no way that you can substantiate that the agent causation, like, you somehow override physics and your biology in a way to where you have that ability of the will. That to me seems just absolutely asinine for the distinction.
If there's any belief that I had wishful thinking towards, it was the idea that free will was a thing. And I spent over a decade trying to find a good argument for it. I didn't find any such thing. I don't think theism accounts for it at all. And no, he's right. Atheism doesn't account for it. My perspective says that it's not a thing. So
yeah.
As far as the expansion of the early church, I don't. What is the mystery there?
Oh well, sorry. Go ahead. I was going to say. I mean, that's a common one I hear.
I don't know. I don't understand where the question is. Like, we've seen belief systems spread, all kinds of belief systems spread pretty quickly. It's how humanity functions or behaves often. Those kind of ideologies can spread like wildfire. Even the most ridiculous ones can bring in thousands of followers on really terrible explanations. So I don't know why that's even a question. How would you answer that?
How would you answer what? The
expansion of the early church.
Expansion
of the church. Is that a mystery?
Yeah. I mean, to me, that's weird. It's like, okay, if that, I don't know how that's lent credit. Like, what about the expansion of the word of Muhammad? I don't. Does that lend some credit? I'm trying to understand why that is if you already agree that, like, so if you're a Christian and you use the expansion of the church, it's weird to me because you have more examples of the expansion of different religions growing, whether a single figure or not, and that those happened just through some natural means where there is no God behind that, right? And so to me, it's a very weird assessment that you would use that while you have all these examples around you of them not being tied into what you would think, right? I mean, do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
seems odd that you would take that bet,
But also the fact that people believe a certain thing doesn't give any credibility to its truth value. Like, what matters is the methodology. Forget the 500, which is not even a historical fact, but let's make it 1 million. If 1 million people are believing a claim based on a flawed approach to engaging with reality, then there's no reason to believe in the claim of the 1 million people. Like, it depends on how that's taking place and how the claim is being investigated.
Yeah, and I think the miracle of Fatima is a really good example, and more I've looked about that. It's like that I don't think there was any surveys taken. Like, there's nothing that gives you the level that the legend's grown to, where these 30,000 people had seen it. And you could take of the perihelion that's observed weeks before the event on different numerous days. you could take that aside and still, it's just, to me, it's there's no secret on how legend or lore or things, like we have a plethora of examples of that in terms of the whole growing of the early church. People get convinced and they pass things along. I mean, we've done this with every religion that they don't believe in is an example of that, and they're just taking a bet on the one. But
two quick things. Oh, sorry. I thought
why can't a miracle happen? Did we talk about miracles?
Yeah, and I'm not saying that anything is impossible. I'm saying, like, what reasons do I have to believe that something like that has taken place other than someone just saying it did? Like, that's not. Also, I don't understand. See, if you could elaborate what you mean by this. That's a flawed approach, casting fallacy. I'm not sure what you mean.
Did Braxton mention miracles? I didn't hear it.
No. I think you mentioned the miracle of Fatima.
Well, yeah, I meant to. Yeah, I know that. I meant when I said did we? I meant to say did Braxton. I just didn't know if he put that in there or not. But
no, I don't think so.
So it's a flawed approach, casting fallacy. I don't know what that means either.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you
mean. Let's go ahead and muscle through it.
Near-death experiences, beauty, the rapid expansion of the early church, the events surrounding
near-death experiences. It's very odd that you only have near-death experiences with the specific religion that you already believe in, and that we don't have people having near-death experiences of the God they don't believe in. Not that I think that would be that significant anyway, but
we have a lot of information.
Sure, I mean, you can go down to the psychological level. Like, I'm sure you might be able to elucidate on that a lot better.
Well, even outside of the psychological level, on just on pure neuroscience, we have a lot of literature on the idea of near-death experience. There's no problem there. Like, I don't know what he's referring to.
All right.
But, let's keep going, I guess.
Yeah, I'm trying to get. There we go.
The life and death of Jesus of Nazareth and our shared longing for purpose and meaning. So what is it that Christianity doesn't answer as well as your worldview? If your definition
what was the last question?
That it's a lack.
It cut out. I didn't hear the last thing he said.
He was saying, what is it that what we said already, like about Christianity, that doesn't answer those questions as well?
Just restate it. Merely that it's a lack of belief in God, and you're just waiting to be convinced. But then you speak of him as though he's in some way synonymous with Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, or fairies. Doesn't that at least send the message to your listeners that you actually believe that there is no God? After all, these are entities and beings that you likely believe do not exist. And if your response is that you merely lack a belief in Santa Claus and don't actively believe that he...
this one's really, really easy for me if this is where he's going. The Christian God in my worldview does not exist. Like, I take the affirmed statement that the Christian God does not exist. So, very, very easy for me. Any God, well, there's a lot of gods that I think that, like Darth's God, right? Like Darth's the Christian God, but Darth's God is defined as a God that is revelatory, at which everybody knows that this God exists, right? Well, I do not know his God exists, and just by simple modus tollens, you could just give an argument, say, okay, if Darth's God is exists, then I know it. Premise 2, I don't know it, therefore Darth's God doesn't exist, right? So any God that is a statement of a prerequisite of knowledge or something like that, I 100% think that God does not exist.
I don't say anything at 100% certainty, but I would say I also don't believe. Like, to me, it's more than just a lack of belief. I actively don't believe that there is a God.
Sure. I mean, yeah, 100% is not always the best, but I mean, I'm as confident as I am that that I'm not a brain of that, you know.
Exactly.
That is the level that I can get to. I don't have access to the highest level, but on that highest level of confidence, if that's 100%, that's where I'm at.
Right. Real quick, how does science tell us stuff? Convince me of scientific realism. So, again, science can provide sort of a framework of how would I put this? It makes novel predictions that then it can verify. And so in that verification, it can separate certain things from being purely imaginary to being actual. Now, I'm not saying that science can give us absolute certainty, certainly not about ontology. Like, it could be the case that ultimately reality is in some way non-physical, and science is just one approach to understand part of that reality. Well, that's perfectly fine. But the tool of science as a way to verify its hypotheses that theism doesn't have. And ultimately, it's not that I'm trying to convince you. It's that you're already, in a sense, convinced by the fact that you use technology, you rely on the same science. And I don't mean you specifically, Spencer, but people who in general want to throw skepticism towards science. I'm fine if you want to say that science can provide us with absolute truth. But it certainly, it provides with something that, whether you say you believe in it or not, you at least live as though you believe in it. You don't jump off of roofs thinking that you're gonna float because you say you don't believe in gravity. Use technology. Most of how people function is based on a kind of empirical approach to things. So.
Yeah. And I didn't know if that was his. Oh, Atheist Cats. That's what I thought. I was looking for. I thought Atheist Cats was in here. What's up? Let's go on to the clips. Probably, I'm going to not respond as many. If you have questions, we'll try to get some at the end. We'll try to get through the video because
sure.
I'm talking not specifically to you, but to the audience that has questions. If you do, save them maybe towards the end. That way, because me and Cease get distracted, and we are at 2. So let's trunk through this.
Yeah.
Does not exist. Doesn't that sound a little disingenuous, honestly? When atheism becomes a part of someone's worldview, they typically change their positions on other issues like abortion, sexual morality, and a number of other things. I actually have several videos of well-known atheists saying that there's nothing wrong with prostitution, that they hope their children don't save themselves until marriage. And
so it was 2 just asking if you don't believe in God. I don't know. Maybe I missed the whole thing.
Santa Claus, the Easter
It's been a
Bunny,
long
or
day.
fairies. Doesn't that at least send the message to your listeners that you actually believe that there is no God? After all, these are entities and beings that you likely believe do not exist. And if your response is that you merely lack a belief in Santa Claus and don't actively believe that he does not exist, doesn't that sound a little disingenuous, honestly?
Okay, so that part is part. No, if you have a proposition of something and you make the claim that the thing is true, like if you don't accept that thing, that's all anyone means by lacking it. It's just saying I don't accept the proposition to be true. I don't accept the proposition to be false. That's what it's stating. So I don't.
Right.
There's nothing magical about that. I don't.
There's nothing disingenuous. It's just a very basic concept. Like, I don't accept it as true. It doesn't mean that I necessarily believe it's false, but I just see no reason to accept it as true.
Exactly.
Now, someone like
in this
like
case,
us,
I think this is false. I think the proposition is false.
Right. But that's a separate issue. There's nothing disingenuous about not accepting it as true.
Yeah, and a lot of people mistake. They're like, "Oh, well, so then you're a lack theist." I'm like, "No, I'm defending the lack theist. I'm saying that they have a right to state that. I mean, because that's going to be universally my thing. Like, I don't know what proposition of God you're bringing to me. In that case, I might be agnostic because I don't even know what the fuck we're talking about. That's not up to me to figure it out. So
he's saying if we're using examples like the Eastern Bunny when we obviously don't believe in the Eastern Bunny, then that makes it sound like we're talking two sides of our mouth.
Okay, that's the part that I didn't hear at the beginning. But
right, which is fine. Like, okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't have a problem. I just didn't okay. I didn't understand the entailment of speaking to like the lower end of the spectrum there.
When atheism becomes a part of someone's worldview, they typically change their positions on other issues like abortion, sexual morality, and a number of other things. I actually have several videos of well-known atheists saying that there's nothing wrong with prostitution, that they hope their children don't save themselves until marriage, and that sex workers should be put up on a pedestal, no different than the military. I didn't use those here because I didn't want to seem combative to individuals, specifically the individuals who made those statements. But even if you didn't become an atheist just so you could sin, and I believe you, do you at least understand why those moves could send that message to people who might say that to you?
I don't give a shit how you interpret it. And I'll go on record. There's nothing wrong with sex work whatsoever. From my perspective, as long as it isn't something that is causing you harm, and I think there are some people who engage in stuff in a way that's self-destructive, but there's nothing necessarily self-destructive inherently about it. As long as it's not causing you harm, I don't see anything wrong with it. Also, what that has to do with atheism, I have no idea why. I don't see the connection there at all. But no, I don't see anything wrong with sex work. What was everything? Well, I know many atheists who are pro-choice. Pro-life. I would say probably the majority is pro-choice, but
yeah, I mean that's not
the issue.
Yeah, I have several atheist friends that are pro-life. I think even Skylar Fiction, which I'm not saying we're friends, I don't really know him well, but I think even Skylar Fiction is a decently popular atheist YouTuber, is pro-life. But besides that point, I'm going to make a weirder point because you pretty much hit everything I would say, but I would extrapolate that a little further and say, like, when we talk about what something is like when we say something is wrong, like when we define it, we're actually giving some normative evaluation. Like even the anti-realists that I know, I was a non-cognitivist most of my I don't know what my life or whenever I recognized that I didn't think moral propositions or stated really anything in the world. And I've flirted and leaned many ways since, but it's never changed what I recognize as beneficial from a standpoint of creating the goal that benefits people. And the question left is to say, like, well, why does that matter? That's a whole different philosophical debate, which I get. I don't think really anybody's bridging it better than the person they're claiming can, right? Or can't. But what I would say is, like, most of the anti-realists I know that I talk to, or even error theorists who think all moral propositions are false, like, they're generally better people in the sense that I never have to see them defending slavery or things that they're going to just say, well, there is no reason that's wrong, but they're going to still stick up for something that clearly affects humans or phenomenological states or whatever it might be. And so the question, I guess, isn't whether it is objective or not in that sense, but it's to say, like, I don't get that argument because from the people that are espousing objective morality, or what's a sin, of the same people that are defending such horrible atrocities that their own God, supposedly had done. So long-winded, but for me, it's just, I just see opposite from my interactions. I see very much the opposite, and that Christians are the ones usually defending such horrendous moral dilemmas, not even people that take the claim that, all moral propositions are false, like an error theorist. So I don't know. That's long way.
They're both groups are hypocritical, as far as I'm concerned, and both groups are fairly detached.
Well, sure, that's not where I'm. I'm definitely not going. My point to say is just like, if I'm going to look at it from my perspective on there, I see better behavior, and I am a moral realist, so it's like I do see, from my standpoint or my worldview, that it seems that the Christians act out of line of that, as even more so than the people that deny, moral propositions. Sure. But that's a whole thing. So let's move on.
If it's a lack of belief sort of atheism, what is it? Is it 50-50, 60-40, 75-25? And at what point do you feel disingenuous saying that you merely lack a belief as a
Okay, so I kind of track back over what I was saying earlier. I know the only thing I know for certain, 100%, is that I exist in some state. I don't really know what the actual state might be, but I know for a fact that I exist. And so when I compare that certainty to the claim I said 100% earlier in the stream, when I said 100% your God doesn't exist, admittedly, when pressed, I'd have to say, well, it's lower than that because for all I know, I'm being deceived by your God. That's a possibility, So I have that, but given the presentation of the world that I'm currently in, the kind of the ontological assumption that I have to take, that does not map the reality that I'm in, and so it seems to be the only way that I could be wrong, as if your God is just deceiving me. That kind of be my response. It's pretty much about 100%, as much as I can get to. Or as much as anybody can get to with solipsism, essentially, is my confidence.
Yeah, I mean, I think throwing numbers in this context is a bit silly, because how do we even derive what makes it 99% as opposed to 84%?
Exactly. Yeah,
but I would just say but for the sake of just simplicity, I would say I'm 99% sure there is no God, and leave it at that.
Yeah, I see no logical contradiction. I see, with their God, his God specifically, I do see many logical contradictions. One being just the person that's the arbiter of the laws of logic is also the person that violates them by being three things at one time, or has certain omni properties that are just contradictory. Regardless of that, God in general, which is why you leave the percentage open or whatever, that comes down just on the basis of that I don't see logical contradictions in it. So sure, it could be possible. I have no reason to think that it's the case. So it stays very, it's this very high at that level of not going to be the case. Is this a presupper? No, he's not a presupper. He's an evidentialist.
As opposed to leaning towards, I believe that God does not exist. Now, I know we've all got our talking points, but I want you to struggle to be as sincere with yourself as you can right now. Doesn't it bother you a little bit that when we come to talk about the origins of the universe, and if there's a multiverse, the origin of that too, that the only real options you've got besides God is a past infinite universe, which is impossible, or the universe coming to exist uncaused out of nothing, or something far less clear than even those? It seems that for any worldview that includes atheism, there's a massive blind spot when it comes to the origin of the universe. And all the attempts to try and circumvent that problem seem desperate and at least far less likely than theism. My question isn't just what do you typically say?
It skipped up on me a little bit. I'm going to rewind that.
For any worldview that includes atheism, there's a massive blind spot when it comes to the origin of the universe. And all the attempts to try and circumvent that problem seem desperate and at least far less likely than theism. My question isn't just what do you typically say about this, because I'm well aware of the responses. My question is simply this: when you step away from the debate mode that it's so easy for us all to get into online, doesn't this issue destabilize you a little bit? It seems to fit really poorly with any worldview that includes atheism.
I mean, that is delusional on every level.
Yeah, that was very what?
Aside from the fact that there was nothing possible about infinity, like the theism attempt to disprove the concept of infinity, I think, is a flawed one, and we should do an episode on just that at some point. But
so I don't know your take on it, right? So I'm someone more that's gonna say that I think infinity is just more of a concept. It's not really actually a quantity that's like achievable, but I don't see what that would even matter if I was to. But I also don't know your take on that.
Well, I would just say this: there's nothing for him to talk about likelihood in the context of theism. Again, he has to provide what novel predictions theism has verified. Otherwise, all he has is speculation. He has no grounds to talk about likelihood because he hasn't shown how any of his claims are beyond imaginary. Now, as science fiction-like and strange as some theories in physics may sound, that are as counterintuitive as they may sound, at the very least, they are grounded in something that is far more precise than the claims of theism. You can say what you want about quantum physics. There is a experimental level to it that we see that is already far more than anything that theism has ever done in the history it's existed. So for him to talk about, on the atheistic perspective and on the scientific perspective, the idea of the origin of the universe should destabilize us. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, what was the reason that he gave for that? That was what
one, that the universe has always existed, which he says is impossible. How he would know that it's impossible, I don't know. Two, that it's unreasonable to think that the universe came from nothing, which ironically is actually the theistic view, not the atheistic view. It's God.
None of these are part of like Big Bang cosmology. I need to ask what it even means by universe, because that's not the set of all things. I mean, what is he talking about when he means the universe in the first place? We talk about the universe, we're talking about like the expansion and formation of subatomic particles and things like that from an initial state of high density and temperature, right? It's like I'm really not understanding the context of universe, because I feel like that people just throw the word universe in there and don't, like, I don't know if they're saying just the set of all things, or if they're saying our observable universe, or
yeah, it's unclear, or maybe he means reality as a whole. Like, I don't know what he's exactly referring to, but I was just interpreting as the physical universe that physics studies, like the galaxies and like matter and that kind of thing. Like,
yeah, and hydrogen, helium, lithium merging with gravity and forming stars.
There is absolutely
all that. You don't need a god in order to.
There is nothing. Yeah, there is no need. Yeah, there's something destabilizing about. Again, this is just a matter of educating yourself about the physics, and letting go of your intuitions, and actually putting in the effort to look at what is actually reasonable to believe given the available evidence.
Well, yeah, and my thing is, what I would want to know is how he accounts, for abundance of primordial elements, Hubble's law and the expansion of space, things like this, where I don't understand where, like, it's what did he say, destabilizing, or it should be destabilizing? Is that what he said? Was that the word he used? I don't know how that's the case in any facet, when there's no real explanation offered up by the theist that isn't just some post hoc assessment of the data we already have.
And that's the thing. And also saying God did it does nothing to actually explain away how it was done, why it was done, what way it was done.
Yeah.
Like, it's not.
I almost want to watch that part back again. It was so dumbfounded, but all right, we'll move on.
Of the arguments for God's existence, is there one that to you seems more interesting than the rest?
Actually,
is there one that?
No, I'm sorry. I got to do it. I have to go back. I'm sorry.
That includes atheism. There's a massive blind spot when it comes to the origin of the universe. And all the attempts to try and circumvent that problem seem desperate and at least far less likely than theism. My question isn't just what do you typically say about this, because I'm well aware of the responses. My question is simply this: when you step away from the debate mode,
it's like I know you're thinking about this when you're in your room, not debate mode, all worried about, like, what? No, we don't have the answers. That's okay. That's how science works. You try to find the answer.
He says he's well aware of the answers, and then he says things like the universe came out of nothing. as though anybody actually takes this seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
I'm not great at physics or anything like that. Stuff I'm trying to learn, but like none of these are. I could say with high level confidence that like what he espouses has no basis in the actual physics that are professed in the field, as opposed to everybody that is doing that and not including God in their models. But
he has no way to talk about likelihood in this context because he has no way to show that any of his claims are part of reality.
Yeah,
that's why talking about that it's more likely that Jesus resurrected as opposed to other psychological explanations is laughable, because you have to show that people can come back from the dead, like actually show that rather than just assume it based on hearsay.
Yeah, exactly. I'll make an abductive assessment to the best inference, yet the thing at which that I base the inference off of has a data set of 0. So you're literally just deriving something that doesn't, it's insane. It begs the very question. You don't need it. Maybe he'll get into that question. I'll save it. Maybe not. The resurrection is one that we'll have to do a whole episode on, because I could talk about for 5 hours about why that is the most ridiculous. Why the atonement, why Jesus even coming down to earth, why all of it's, and I'll go on the record to say, is absolutely stupid from my perspective. Like, it's just a dumb story. It's not entertaining. I wouldn't go see it again. I wouldn't wait for the sequel. I'm not going to care about 20 years when they do a remake. It's just a bad story. Move on.
Of the arguments for God's existence, is there one that to you seems more interesting than the rest? Is there one that for you actually does weigh in favor of theism? Which one? Most atheists I've met humbly admit that they don't think they can have absolute certainty about much of anything.
Wait, pause.
What they want from the Christian is a demonstration that God exists.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to answer 6? He said 6 was, are there any arguments for God?
So it paused on my. Okay, whoops, sorry.
No, you're good. 6 was just, I can just say it again. Okay. Or you can
no, sorry.
You're good.
Let me go to the beginning of it. Go ahead, keep talking. I'm just getting it ready for 7. That's my bad. Yeah, I don't know why I skipped over it. I was like in my head, like brain fart.
You're good. Here, play it again.
I'm getting a lot of skipping. It's not happening on your end?
No, you're good on mine.
Okay.
But now it's just stopping loading. Okay, you're good.
I think it says.
Most atheists I've met humbly admit that they don't think they can have absolute certainty about much of anything. But what they want from the
6 went by quick. Let's see. Bear with me, guys.
Arguments for God's existence. Is there one that to you seems more interesting than the rest? Is there?
Yeah, I'm just going to back to 5.
Of the arguments for God's existence, is there one that to you seems more interesting than the rest? Is there one that for you actually does weigh in favor of theism? Which one?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that was quick. So, I guess we'll answer this with a gun to the head, because I do not think that there are any good arguments. I think any a priori assessment stating that you could somehow get to this metaphysical necessary thing in the armchairs, I'm very skeptical about that. But if I have like a gun to my head, I'd say it's the modal ontology. Oh my God, I'm just kidding. I was trying not to laugh while I said that. I'm just kidding.
Oh, sounds like nauseous.
Yeah, I know. It's the worst one. I don't know, man. I really don't think any of them are good. So I don't know. I would say the only thing that I reflect on is maybe things that have to do with the mind, but only, I don't know. I feel like I'm forcing an answer. I feel like I'd be shot right now by the guy who's like, give me a good answer. Yeah, it's all a leap for me to admit to it. So I almost just wouldn't want to, because I would just feel like I'm saying something I don't actually believe in. But if I had to say the best one, maybe something that would deal with consciousness or why I can perceive and things like that in certain ways. That's what got me as a kid to really think about it. Like, why can I even do this was kind of always the thing. Like, but it's not really an argument. That's just giving up on a question and saying God did it. So I don't know. I'd like to hear yours, because I think I just got shot in the head by the guy who put a gun to my head to give him an answer. So
the only one that's remotely has ever given me a slight pause was the idea of fine tuning.
Really?
But the moment that you actually looked at that closer and you actually put in the work to understand the science, that comes undone so quickly. But it's the only one that's made me think for like 5 seconds, like, oh, let me see how I can actually deal with this, as opposed to all the other ones that are just so easily, you can so easily respond to.
Okay, you know what? I'll update my answer. I actually do have one. Any arguments towards like a necessary being, contingent, things like that, I don't really agree with currently. I've backed off them, but I can understand the position of getting there. And then your only next step from that position, I guess, is to just give a demonstration, or maybe you just a priori argue that it has to be a mind or a God. That's where I definitely jump off board. But that's, I think, about as close as you could get. So I think that'd be probably an actual answer to give. But yeah, I can you guys refute Thomistic arguments? Existential inertia. Did it in 2 words.
Oh,
we'll do an argument, or I mean, we'll do a video on Thomism. We keep saying we were going to do it. We just haven't done it.
I really want to. I think it's important.
Yeah, I've been a little bit pedantic on it, because every Thomist's motto is you don't understand Thomism. That's like it's their fucking catchphrase. It's all they ever do. And so I wanted to make a good episode and make sure that not a single Thomist could do that. I think it's not going to matter. They're still you don't understand it. And so we'll go through.
It's something I would enjoy going through. We went through it to a degree when we had my brother on, and
that's
we
true.
brought in some. But I would like to go part of the depth with it, because I think it's interesting.
Can you prove existential inertia is metaphysically possible? We'll get into all that. I don't want to get sidetracked on a completely different topic like existential inertia or Thomism when we have 8 videos and I have to go in 20 minutes. So
let's go.
But yeah, Spencer, come back. I think it's Spencer. Come back in and definitely bug me about that, because I love the Thomist Phaser. I have a lot of respect for Phaser in terms of like, hearing his debates, his arguments, not so much, but I like the guy, like kind of like Rasmussen. I think they're good guys to listen to.
Most atheists I've met humbly admit that they don't think they can have absolute certainty about much of anything. But what they want from the Christian is a demonstration that God exists or that Christianity is true. Well, when we offer the reasons to believe that we do have, those are typically deemed not good enough. So what sort of evidence, if any, would be enough to convince you? Do you know? And since it's often a conversation stopper, let's take experimental reproducibility off the table, since that's not.
So if the creation story was correct in that sense, that it's given in Genesis, if people could rise from if I could actually have seen Jesus rise from the dead, maybe I'll probably be less of a person to be very staunch on it. If you make a novel prediction that's going to happen and it happens, then I could lend that evidence, probably not sufficient evidence. But if all the claims in your book were actually true and matched reality, then I'd believe it. But they don't, and that's why I do not. So it's already kind of. Sorry.
I love how he says, "Let's take experiments off of the table."
No, there's no taking that. I'm not taking that off the table. Sorry,
no, but that's what he said. He said that's the thing. It's like, you can't take it off the table. Like that's exactly what I need. And I don't need certainty that your God exists. I just need, good enough evidence that makes it reasonable to believe. And so told me it's not evidence of anything.
Well, and just telling you to back off your epistemic framework to hey, just come down to a level where you can basically believe everything. What would convince you? Well, then everything would. I mean, just tell me and I would believe you, because I would lack the epistemic framework required to differentiate between you just telling me something as opposed to it being actually true.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to do that. Like, that's just, you're just saying like, hey, forget the thing that you need that actually is like a good indicator of when something is the case. Like, no, I'm not going to, that's, get out of here.
Not even always necessary for science.
What?
Look,
to what extent
it doesn't have to just be science. It can be any other method. If you have one, show its reliability, or undermine reliability and say that doesn't matter and show me some other way. I'd be very interested in some. I mean, it just seems like you're going down postmodernism at that point. But
I don't know what he means by the idea of experimentation. Like, yeah, there are aspects of science that, for a time being, are purely theoretical, but it doesn't become a well-established theory that's believed and respected until you can provide some level of empirical evidence and substance to it. So to yeah, like you said, to disregard all that is just ridiculous.
yeah, I'm not really confused. Or bring him forth and point him out. I don't know.
He's saying don't argue for God, just produce him. I think he's referring to theists.
Okay, the capital H confused me. It's usually like a Christian thing to do. You know, I'm not gonna lie, I'm very weirded out when I see like Christians comment on things and like they capitalize him and things like it. And it's really strange. It feels very culty to me when I read it. But anyway,
social and moral issues start you down the path toward your atheism. That is to say, the typical Christian or religious views on sexuality, gender, rights, and acts and commands of God in the Old Testament. It seems that many deconversion stories online begin with, or at least
keep skipping on me.
LGBT issues and
I think it's on your end.
Yeah.
Typical Christian
or
I'm religious views on sexuality, gender, start you down.
Okay. It just keeps popping and skipping.
To what extent did social and moral issues start you down the path toward your atheism? That is to say, the typical Christian or religious views on sexuality, gender, rights, and acts and commands of God in the Old Testament. It seems that many deconversion stories online begin with, or at least include, LGBT issues, purity culture, or hell as instrumental in the deconversion process. It strikes me that what should matter most is the truth and not what we might prefer that the truth were. I honestly wonder.
I agree. I wasn't deconverted. We're both never Christians, right?
Yeah, I was never deconverted.
This is not even applicable. Like, I just have never been convinced of the claim ever. It's always like, I think there's two different categories here. Like, if you've come from, I don't know the person, I don't know their mind, but if you've come from religion, I think it's different than on me and Cease's side, where this has always been weird. When someone says like, I believe in a God, and I say that's like an imaginary friend, like it literally feels like the same thing when someone says like, hey, here's my imaginary friend. Like, it's that weird to me, because it's just like, what? Like, you don't have any evidence for this? You know, I've always just had this mindset, except for in high school when I became a spiritualist, but you know, don't do drugs, kids. And then I let go of what I thought was good evidence for things and believed pretty much anything that anybody told me. Though ironically, it's weird that I gave up all that in Christianity. It was still like unlikely, and my most vulnerable state of believing things. But it just goes to show, at least from my standpoint, how unsubstantiated it is. But yeah, so I don't know if you want to add to that. It's pretty easy.
Yeah,
it's pretty.
I would say that I've always been pretty much an atheist, outside of when I was like maybe 13 or 14, and even then I was generally a deist without really thinking much about it. But I would say my atheism is just out of the realization that there is no good argument for God or any religion. My anti-theism is a result of religion's history against women, LGBTQ people, things like purity culture, and I think the general arrogance that I observe from the religious perspective. Those are the things that I think make fuel my anti-theism.
Yeah, and honestly, I wanted to comment on that real quick before we move on. Is that the fact that Braxton would even fucking suggest that someone has an issue, with they're trans and that's why they left. All the entailments that he brings to that is cowardice. It's like that is a last ditch effort for your own faith to try to pull people like that. I mean, I know it's subtle in there, but the fact that he's like, always notice when I'm online, it's these types of things, or whether the person has fear of hell. It's like, dude, people come to the belief because they just go, wow, I'm not convinced of this. And just the fact that you can't believe that because you're still stuck in a delusional mind frame is not their problem. It's your fucking problem, dude. But just know you were not indoctrinated prior to your age of reason. What is an age of reason? Is that like 4, 5? Curious on that age.
Wonder how much those issues and ones like them motivate the deconversion rather than all this talk about evidence.
All this talk.
Can you name the last 3 academic books you read by theists on the subject? How long ago did you read them? Or is most of your understanding of apologetics and atheism from non-scholarly internet sources, pop-level books, and, let's face it, YouTube videos? And be honest with yourself about this. Anyone can Google up a list of books and paste them in the comments section. But I want to know, are you getting the best from the other side?
So unfortunately, my camera is holding up all my books, but to show that it is, I will remove my camera, Braxton. And sadly, like this is going to look so bad, but because I'm literally the book that's holding up my camera right now is an inquiry concerning human understanding David Hume. But regardless of that, like I'm using majority of the books that are holding this up. If I can pull one out, there's Josh Bowen's book. It's gonna be tough for me to do. I'll have to come back on that. But I have your boy Lee Strobel. I have like 3 of his books. Case for Christ and some other one I can't remember. J.L. Mackey's got one, arguments for and against. I know that's not one, but I've heard a theist actually suggested that to me, which is actually a good book. I know that's like totally off the mark there, but that's a good one. I want to look at the back of these so I see which ones. What do you have any literature as well?
I would say Phaser's works, Descartes' works.
Oh, hey, speaking of,
right.
Yeah, I got a bunch of Kant.
Yeah, right.
Fuck to read, by the way. Kant's
Kant's awful to read.
Let me try to do this without breaking shit.
I mean, I've been particularly interested in the Thomist, St. Aquinas. It's a combination of. I think a lot of it is more ancient philosophy.
Yeah.
And then there was some contemporary, like people like William Lane Craig.
Oh, here's a theist book. Oh, whoops, that's the wrong one.
I can't tell what it says, but Charles Darwin. So like William Lane Craig, Phaser.
Rasmussen. I let my buddy borrow. What's that? I have to Google it. Rasmussen's book where he wrote this book with a naturalist. I haven't got to finish it, but I can't remember the name of the book. But he co-writes this book with a naturalist, and they kind of like trade off ideas throughout it. And towards the end, they kind of agree. They take their agreements and disagreements. That's a really good one that I hadn't really got to finish, but there's a lot of good ones. I definitely read a lot more philosophy than I do like probably.
Kierkegaard is a good one, although his work is not like proof of God. Like he's not trying to prove God or anything, but there are definitely
Does a Bible
lot of
count as well.
Well, that's what I was gonna say.
I feel like that
nothing
counts.
better than the primary source, right?
Yeah.
But
I got one from my
I think
uncle.
Kierkegaard is an interesting one because he's religious, but in a kind of really weird, different way.
When I went to Florida, my uncle gave me this, and because we were talking about religion, and I looked this guy up, Angus Buchanan or something. He is a nut job, dude. Like absolutely, like yeah. There's like there's a Wikipedia page just has like a bunch of things that he said that have been controversial. But yeah, anyway. So yeah, a lot of philosophy and things like that, but Habermas,
right? Okay, yeah.
Strobel. Strobel's the worst of them all, I'd say. But
no, I can't be bothered with Strobel, but I
well,
have read
that was
some
one of the first ones I read as someone who offered to me as a Christian. It was like, you need to read A Case for Christ, and I was like, okay, and then I read it and I was like, wow, this is thanks. I really don't know if this made me more of an atheist, but anyway.
Well, yeah. All right,
and let's finish with a pretty common one. If you found out today, to your satisfaction, that Christianity were true, would you accept God's authority, repent of your sins, and trust Jesus as your king?
Okay, I knew this was going to be the last one.
Oh yeah, me too.
That's always the last one. The only way that I would actually be able to repent, get down, and things like that is some explanations that's satisfactory towards the state of why certain things are suffering, gratuitous suffering, why people have to go through such horrible shit for some silver lining at the end, why some people don't have to, why I'm more fortunate than some other people who've given their life to Christ, things like that, right? I'd have to get a lot of insight onto that. If that's not satisfactory or I'm not deserved an answer, then that God can go fuck himself and I will burn forever, just very happy that I'm not in eternity with that thing, because that thing seems to be the thing you would want to get away from. Of all things, that would be the thing you'd want to get away from for eternity. And so depends on those circumstances for me. But yeah, I don't know. You'd have to really have to sell that to me. And I don't know. The idea of worship to me seems like an odd thing for a God to ask of itself. It kind of puts worship over itself too. But what would be your answer? I'm curious.
My answer is that I don't know what he means by Christianity. It would entirely depend on what interpretation of Christianity he's arguing for. So, like, that term is meaningless to me. If by Christianity he means, like, you worship this God, there's a heaven and a hell, he's drowned babies, like, no, he can fuck off. If it means something more metaphorical than that, and hopefully less immoral than that, no, I still wouldn't worship. I think any God that demands worship, I think, is basically, almost by definition, imperfect being.
That's kind of, yeah, that's why I mentioned the worship thing. It's like, if the caveat is to get on the knee and worship, yeah, that's I don't know about that. That seems excessive to me.
So the likely answer is no. Even if I knew God existed, that wouldn't be enough of reason to bow down. I don't think there's anything that would get that kind of behavior from me.
Well, I'm trying to be charitable, so I'm trying to find, because I feel like it's easy for an atheist just to say, no, fuck that God or whatever. But if you could explain a lot of it, so I think that's the God's impossible. Like I've already taken that stance. I don't think that this God's even possible. But if I'm being charitable and accepting the proposition, if that's the case, well, if you reconcile those things and look, I guess what I'm saying is, if the God is not the God in this book and we just have this wrong, and then there's ways to explain all the things that we think are the case, and this is just wrong, then I would believe in that God. But if it is the contents of that, right? That's not something I'd be able to worship, especially if it can't actually reconcile the issues that I have from its moral standpoint. But that I'm just trying to be charitable.
But he's going beyond just belief. He's saying, like, if it was proven to you that God existed, would you worship that God? Would you, I think he was asking about worship. Maybe I'm remembering wrong.
Yeah, get down on your knee, worship, repent.
Right, okay.
I mean, like, I just don't throw the blanket statement of no at things unless they could be reconciled in ways. But yeah, I mean, as it currently stands with my aspects of worship, things like that, no. But if you're right, if those things were reconciled in some way that actually made sense and I was certain of it, sure, maybe. But even then, it's like, am I being brainwashed at that sense? I don't know. It's hard to know. You're doing it on the basis of your own phenomenological state. So it's like, it's really just an interpretation. I don't think God is of the essence of something that we could even apply interpretation to. It doesn't have any way to rule things in or rule things out. But yeah, I don't know. It's definitely a tough question. Maybe, I guess is my answer.
I don't see any religious context that would result in me worshiping and repenting. I just think that's completely ridiculous. So.
Yeah. Well, sweet. I think that's it, right?
Yep.
That's all. Number 10. Yeah. Well, so I didn't really make an announcement earlier. If you aren't aware, I am now on Talk Heathen, hosting kind of like once, twice a month type of thing. I got my first host show this Sunday, so I'm nervous as hell for that. Wish me luck. Hopefully I don't blunder. Today's was real rough for me. Cease knows, really under the weather. So barely been getting sleep, so bear with me. If you've seen episodes where you go, Mike seems way sharper here and very not so sharp here, you know why. I have horrible sleep habits, and it has gotten me sick at this point. So hopefully I resolve that, be better, more perky next time. And hopefully that doesn't affect me Sunday as well. But yeah, Cease, you want to add anything before we sign off?
No, thought that was fun, and hopefully we can come back with another episode. I think Monday is when we're doing the next one.
Yes, Monday we are doing the next one. Yes, that's what I meant to say, and I just skipped my head.
So
yeah, do you want to give a detail on that real quick before we sign out?
Yeah, we're having a professor, Atheist, on to. I think it will be Monday around 7. To discuss, I think, what was it? I forget exactly. I think some of it has to do with Thomism, but I would have to double check. I don't remember exactly at the moment. But yeah, it should be good. It should be a good conversation.
Yeah, I'm hoping that I'm got that all that kind of, well, yeah, that I got the mindset, because we're going to be going over the others, some articles, and some contents in the articles that were written, right? And so hopefully that will be the case. That my I'll drink like 5 Red Bulls, maybe that'll help. I don't know.
That does not sound healthy.
That sounds terrible. Anyway, what time? Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern. Monday it's going to look at my what time just. Oh yeah, who is that? I can't read it. Oh, it's Mama Bear.
Oh, there.
Much love. I have my screen to the side, so it's all half. Sorry, I can't really read the names.
I'm glad it's been helpful for you, for anyone else watching. But all right. Well, that sounds good to me, and yeah, we'll see you guys on Monday.
We will. What time is? Should we give an estimate on that?
I think we said around 7.
7. All right, 7 o'clock it is. And is Steve still in here? I think he is. Well, I don't know if Steve's seen, but we've ended. Steve, you have to go back into the archive because I have a clip of you.
Oh, hello. I'm an American.
And I played that in one of the episodes. I thought it was pretty funny, but I don't think you were in that episode. Anyway, guys, much love. I'm stop bantering, and yeah, peace out. Much love. We'll see you on Monday.
Good night, everyone.